You think you're untouchable, don't you? The voice came from behind Adrian Cole as he stepped out of his father's chauffeured sedan in the school's faculty parking lot. He turned, expecting a teacher or maybe a classmate looking for trouble. Instead, he saw a woman in a faded janitor's uniform pushing a mop bucket across the wet pavement. Her eyes, deep and steady, held him like a hook. "I've seen boys like you," she continued, her tone even but sharp, "and I've seen where they end up." Adrian smirked, adjusting the cuff of his tailored blazer. "Lady, you don't know me." "I know enough," she said, pausing to wring out the mop. "I know that arrogance is just fear dressed in better clothes." For the first time in months, Adrian had no comeback. He stood there, one hand still on the car door, the sound of rain dripping from the eaves filling the silence between them. This was Eleanor Price, though he didn't know her name yet, a woman most students passed without seeing, a ghost in the marble hallways. But her words stayed with him long after he walked away. At 17, Adrian had everything money could buy and nothing money could teach. He wore his last name like a shield, certain it could protect him from the world. But shields can be heavy, and his was cracking. That night, lying in his penthouse bedroom, surrounded by things he didn't earn, he kept hearing her voice. Arrogance is just fear dressed in better clothes. He didn't know why it bothered him so much. Or maybe he did. If you were Adrian, wealthy, untouchable, and told you were destined for greatness, would you listen to a janitor who claimed to see right through you? Or would you dismiss her as just another nobody? 2 weeks passed before Adrian saw her again. In that time, life at Cole Preparatory Academy continued exactly as he'd crafted it. He strode through the marble hallways with his chin high, ignoring the whispers about his failing grades, the sideways glances from teachers who had long since stopped expecting anything from him. But under the surface, something had shifted. Her words, "Arrogance is just fear dressed in better clothes," kept surfacing like an itch he couldn't scratch. He tried to drown them out with expensive noise, designer headphones, weekend trips, late nights with friends who laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. None of it worked. One bitter Tuesday morning, his father cut off his credit cards. No warning, no explanation beyond, "You're not earning a damn thing you're getting." The sleek black sports car was taken from the driveway. For the first time since he could remember, Adrian boarded the yellow school bus, sliding into a seat while students tried and failed not to stare. He kept his gaze fixed on the graffiti etched into the seat back until the bus hissed to a stop in front of the school. Stepping off, shoulders hunched against the winter wind, he spotted her near the side entrance, mopping up a spill with slow, deliberate strokes. She wasn't looking at him, yet he felt seen. As he passed, he caught something. Words, softly spoken, almost to herself. "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." Adrian stopped mid-step. "What did you just say?" She straightened, meeting his eyes with that same calm, unflinching stare. "Nothing you're ready to understand, boy." It wasn't dismissive, more like a challenge. He let out a short laugh, unsure if she was being serious or trying to provoke him. "You're quoting Socrates while you're mopping the floor? And you're failing classes while walking on marble," she replied evenly. "We all end up where our choices take us." The hit landed before he realized it, knocking the smirk right off his face. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she dipped the mop back into the bucket, turning away as if the conversation was over. But Adrian couldn't shake the sting of her accuracy. Later that week, his literature teacher handed him back a test, 18 out of 100. "Did you even read the passage?" scrawled in red ink beneath the score. In math, he scraped a 24%. Biology, 0. The laughter from his classmates was quieter now, edged with pity. That afternoon, after yet another lecture from the school counselor about academic risk, Adrian ducked out through the back exit to avoid the crowd. There she was again, crouched by the cafeteria doors, scrubbing a stubborn stain. She looked up and smiled politely, as if they hadn't spoken at all. "You said something last time," he began, "about Socrates. I remembered it." "And?" she asked, wringing out her cloth. "It stuck with me. Kind of weird, though. Hearing that from—" He hesitated. "A janitor." She set the mop aside and rose slowly, not offended, just deliberate. "What's weirder is a boy with the world at his feet who can't pass a reading test." Adrian bit the inside of his cheek. You used to be a teacher, didn't you? Not just philosophy, she said, her gaze steady. I taught plenty more before life threw me off balance. Then teach me, he blurted. Please. She studied him for a long time, measuring something in his face. Finally, she said, one condition. You leave your name and your pride at the door. Start from zero from the floor. Fine, he whispered, the word surprising even himself. I can't keep failing. She reached into her cleaning cart and pulled out a battered spiral notebook. Meet me here tomorrow morning. And every evening after school, you write what you've learned. Not facts, truth. He glanced down at the notebook, its cover frayed, pages yellowed at the edges. What if I get it all wrong? She smiled faintly. Then, you'll finally be getting it right. The next morning, Adrian arrived before sunrise. The campus was cloaked in fog, the windows of Cole Preparatory still dark, the air sharp with the bite of late winter. He clutched the spiral notebook Eleanor had given him like it was something fragile, something alive. The back entrance creaked open under his hand, and the faint scent of floor polish drifted toward him. In the east wing, he found her, moving a wide mop in slow, precise arcs across the hallway tiles. She was wearing simple earbuds, humming softly, something low and warm, maybe gospel. When she saw him, she removed one earbud and tilted her head. You actually showed up. You said you'd teach me, he replied, trying to sound casual, though his breath was clouding in the cold air between them. I remember, she said, resting on the mop handle. I also said it wouldn't be easy. I don't care, he said quickly. I need this. Then let's begin. But first, you should know my name. She straightened fully. Eleanor Price. He repeated it quietly, committing it to memory. How long have you been here? 3 years. Before that, other schools. And before that, she paused, meeting his eyes. I was a college professor, English, literature, and philosophy. The revelation landed with a weight Adrian hadn't expected. Why would you leave that for this? Eleanor folded her cleaning cloth, no trace of shame in her voice. Sometimes life takes everything you thought was yours and leaves you with nothing but what you know. And I still know how to teach. Something shifted in him then. For the first time, he saw her not as a janitor, not as background, but as someone carrying something unshakable. So where do we start? He asked. She took the notebook from his hands, flipping through its blank pages. The first truth, pride fools you into thinking you already know. But when you admit you don't, that's when you start learning for real. I can read, Adrian muttered, defensive. I didn't say you couldn't. But I'm not talking about reading words. I'm talking about understanding what's between the lines. She reached into her bag and pulled out another notebook, worn with ink stains along the edges. Every morning before class, we meet here. 1 hour, and every evening, after I finish cleaning, you write. What you learned, what you felt, what you understood. No grades, just honesty. He took the notebook back from her, feeling the weight of the commitment more than the paper itself. What if I fail again? Then you're finally doing it right. Over the next week, they fell into a rhythm. At first, Adrian stumbled over the assignments. She didn't lecture. She asked questions that felt like puzzles with no right answer. What did the sentence make you feel? Why do you think the character stayed silent? Can you tell me what courage sounds like? The questions followed him through the day, pushing into spaces his mind had never explored. He began to notice things, pauses in conversations, the way a line in a book could echo a truth he didn't want to face. By the end of the week, his notebook was filling, not with the neat, lifeless bullet points he'd produced for teachers in the past, but with reflections, raw and unpolished. One evening, as he scribbled at a cafeteria table, 2 boys walked by. Ryan Blake, star quarterback, smirked. Look at Cole now, writing love notes to the janitor? Laughter trailed behind them. Adrian's jaw clenched, but before he could fire back, Eleanor appeared, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. You don't measure depth with a shallow ruler, she said quietly. He looked up, the insult forgotten. That line, it landed somewhere deep. That night he wrote until his fingers ached. Not for a grade, not for anyone's approval, but for himself. The weeks that followed felt unlike anything Adrian had ever experienced. Before Eleanor, school had been a place to endure, a stage for his arrogance, a runway for his designer shoes. Now the marble hallways seemed different, not because they had changed, but because he was starting to see what he had ignored. Mornings began in the East Wing with the scrape of chairs and the smell of disinfectant, Eleanor waiting with a book or a question that would unsteady him in all the right ways. They read Baldwin, Hughes, Morrison, not as assignments, but as conversations with voices that demanded he pay attention. She never handed him answers. Instead, she left him wrestling with sentences long after their hour ended. Afternoons were his test. Teachers began noticing the shift. He was sitting up in class, asking questions, sometimes even challenging what was on the page. At first, the other students didn't know what to make of it. Ryan Blake and his crowd still tossed the occasional jab, but Adrian no longer took the bait. Every evening, after the halls emptied and the fluorescent lights buzzed in near silence, Adrian returned to the library, a space so neglected it had become a storage room. Eleanor would wheel in a cart of books, dust rising like ghosts as she stacked them on the long wooden tables. "This place used to be alive," she said once, running her hand over the cracked leather of a forgotten volume. "Maybe it can be again." They began meeting there instead of the cafeteria. At first, it was just the two of them. Then one night, Adrian brought Maya Patel, a quiet classmate from biology, who was struggling with her writing. "She needs help," Adrian explained. Eleanor smiled, pulling up a chair without hesitation. "Then we help her." Word spread quietly. Within a month, 4 more students joined. They came for different reasons, some failing classes, some simply tired of being unseen. But they all stayed for the same one. Here they were being taught, not managed. Eleanor didn't care about their grades. She cared about their minds. They read aloud, debated, sometimes argued. They learned to listen, to defend, to change their minds. Adrian found himself watching them the way Eleanor had once watched him, catching the moment a question cracked something open inside them. It was intoxicating, but not everyone saw it that way. The change was noticed by the wrong people. One drizzly Thursday, Eleanor was summoned to the assistant principal's office. She came back to the library later that evening, her face calm, but her eyes carrying the weight of the conversation. "They told me there have been concerns," she said, setting down her cleaning bucket. "Parents asking why their kids are spending time with the janitor after hours." "You're helping them," Adrian said, anger sharp in his voice. "You're doing the school's job better than they are." "That's not how they see it," she replied evenly. "They said I'm not a certified instructor here, and it's not in my job description." "So what? Neither is saving a kid's life," he shot back. A small smile touched her lips. "That's exactly what I told them." But the reality was clear. Someone wanted her to stop. The next few sessions were tense. Every laugh or heated discussion shadowed by the possibility it could be their last. Still, they kept meeting. If anything, the threat made the work feel even more urgent. One night as the group was packing up, Eleanor caught Adrian lingering by the door. "You're thinking about fighting this," she said. He met her gaze. "I want to tell my dad. I want to go to the board. This isn't right." "Not yet," she said firmly. "Your voice needs to stand on its own first, not as Gregory Cole's son, as Adrian Cole." He nodded, though frustration burned in his chest. He understood what she meant. If he fought now, it would be his father's influence speaking, not his own courage. And courage, he was learning, was worth more than power. Winter crept in, frosting the windows of the old library. The air was cold enough to see their breath when they laughed. But inside Adrian, something warmer was growing. He wasn't chasing grades anymore. He was chasing transformation, and he knew, without question, that he'd found the person who could show him the way. Gregory Cole had built an empire on precision, control, and a ruthless instinct for cutting losses. Unfortunately for Adrian, that same instinct applied to his only son. It started with a conversation over dinner, a conversation that quickly became a verdict. Gregory sat at the head of the long mahogany table, sleeves rolled up, eyes cold. "I hear you've been spending your time with the cleaning staff," he said, not bothering to hide the contempt in his voice. Adrian kept his fork poised over his plate, bracing himself. "Her name's Eleanor. She's teaching me." Gregory scoffed, leaning back. Teaching you what? How to push a mop. You've had the best tutors money can buy, and you're still wasting my time and now hers. She used to be a professor, Adrian said, voice steady. She's taught me more in a month than your tutors did in years. The look in his father's eyes darkened. She's a janitor now. That's all that matters. You are embarrassing this family by associating with someone who has nothing to offer. Adrian felt the heat rise in his chest. She sees me, he said, each word deliberate, which is more than I can say for you. Gregory stood, his presence towering. If you keep going down this road, you lose everything. Your allowance, your car, your name. Don't test me. The words burned on Adrian's tongue, but he let them out anyway. Maybe I need to lose it all to figure out who I actually am. Gregory's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. He simply turned and left the room. The next morning, Eleanor was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Just an empty card in the janitor's closet and a coat missing from its hook. The news came in whispers, budget cuts, they said. But Adrian knew better. She'd been removed quietly, efficiently, the way his father handled any threat to his plans. The old library felt colder without her. The other students stopped coming. Even Maya drifted back to her old routine. Adrian went through the motions, turning in assignments, answering questions in class. But the spark was gone. Late one afternoon, he wandered into the library alone, sat at their usual table and opened his notebook. The pages were filled with her handwriting, questions, underlined phrases, words that cut to the bone. Learning as transformation. Pride as a trap disguised as protection. You don't need permission to become someone new. He traced the ink with his fingertip, his chest tightening. For the first time since she left, he felt the old fire flicker. That same week, an announcement went up on the school bulletin board. End-of-year speech contest, topic, what it means to win in life. Scholarships, recommendations, public recognition. It was a big deal. For most students, it was a chance to shine for the colleges they wanted. For Adrian, it was something else entirely. It was a chance to speak her name out loud in the one place that had tried to erase it. That night, he sat at his desk, pen in hand, staring at a blank page. He thought about Eleanor's voice, the way she could turn a single question into a mirror he didn't want to look into. He thought about her mopping the floors like she was polishing something sacred, about the students she had drawn together without ever asking for credit. Slowly, the words began to come. Not for grades, not for applause, for truth. He wrote late into the night, pages stacking up beside him, each sentence a thread pulling him back to the person he'd started to become. By dawn, his speech was finished. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was real. And for the first time, Adrian realized that was enough. The night of the speech contest arrived with a restless hum in the air. The auditorium was lit bright and warm, filled with students in pressed uniforms, parents in tailored coats, and a scattering of college scouts in the back row with clipboards. Banners bearing the school crest hung from the high rafters, swaying slightly in the draft from the open doors. Backstage, Adrian stood in the shadows wearing a plain navy shirt and dark jeans. No designer suit, no flashy watch. Just him and the notebook in his hand. He could hear the muffled voices of contestants before him, the polite applause, the occasional cough from the crowd. His name was called. Adrian stepped into the light, the hardwood stage creaking under his weight. For a moment, he just stood there, letting the silence settle. "My name is Adrian Cole," he began, his voice steady but low. "Some of you know me as the kid who had every advantage and wasted it, the one who failed test after test, who didn't care, who thought a last name was all I needed." A faint ripple of recognition moved through the audience. "They say I had everything," he continued, "but I didn't have the one thing that mattered, someone who believed in me, until she showed up." He scanned the crowd, pausing on the front row where the judges sat. "She wasn't my teacher, not officially. She had no office, no title. She carried a mop and a bucket. But she taught me how to read between the lines, in books and in life. She taught me how to think, how to listen, how to write with my own voice. She didn't just clean the floors of this school. She cleared the fog in my head." The room had gone still, the kind of quiet that carried weight. Her name is Eleanor Price, he said clearly. She was fired because systems don't like it when someone from the bottom starts giving people real power. But what she gave me, what she gave all of us, can't be erased. She told me learning is transformation, that real winning isn't about being rich or powerful. It's about becoming someone worth remembering. His voice softened. She's not here tonight, but she's in every word I'm saying. He lifted the worn notebook she'd given him. So what does it mean to win in life? It means waking up, letting go of your name, finding your truth and using it to lift others. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then a single clap, another. And suddenly the entire room was on its feet, applause rolling like thunder, faces shining with tears. Adrian stepped back from the microphone, his chest rising and falling, his eyes scanning the crowd. And then he saw her. At the back of the room, standing quietly near the exit, a headscarf tied neatly over her hair, eyes glistening. Eleanor. She didn't wave, didn't call attention to herself, just smiled. And in that smile was every lesson she had ever given him. After the contest, the video of Adrian's speech spread faster than he could have imagined. First through students, then parents, then beyond the school walls. Headlines followed. Billionaire's son credits school janitor for saving his life. Interview requests came in. Offers for Eleanor to speak at community events. By the end of the week, she had been offered a part-time teaching role at a local college, which quickly turned into something bigger. Adrian watched it all unfold with quiet pride, knowing he'd done what he set out to do, make her impossible to ignore. That night, as he sat in his room with the contest trophy on his desk, he realized something. Winning hadn't been standing on the stage, or even seeing Eleanor get her chance back. Winning was knowing that the voice she had helped him find would never be silenced again. Months later, the Eleanor Institute opened its doors in a renovated brick building at the heart of the city. The walls were lined with shelves of books, the kind that had once changed Adrian's life, and long tables where students of every background could sit, write, and speak freely. Eleanor taught the way she always had, without pretense, without a clock dictating her care. Adrian ran the programs, but he never stopped learning, taking a seat in the back of her sessions whenever he could. The local press covered the opening, but what mattered most were the faces that walked through the door. A shy 12-year-old who had been told she was too slow, a teenager who worked nights but still came in to write essays by hand, a boy who had been suspended twice but was now reading Baldwin out loud with conviction. Gregory Cole came quietly to the ribbon cutting, standing at the edge of the crowd. When the speeches ended, he approached Adrian outside, his voice rougher than usual. "I didn't expect to feel something." Adrian met his eyes. "I didn't expect to forgive you." They shook hands, awkward, imperfect, but real. Years later, Adrian took the stage again, this time to accept a National Education Award on behalf of the Institute. He paused before speaking, looking out at the crowd. "They said I failed everything," he began, "until I learned one thing that changed my life. That greatness doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing others. And sometimes the person who teaches you the most isn't in a suit. They're holding a mop, quoting philosophers while no one's listening." He smiled toward the front row, where Eleanor sat, her eyes bright with pride. "Her name is Eleanor Price, and she didn't just save my grades. She saved my soul." If this story made you believe in second chances, in the power of unseen voices, and in the truth that teaching can change a life, share it. Tell me, who was the person that saw you when no one else did?